In Mexico, millions of people live in the shadow of one of the Earth's most dangerous forces, where volcanoes have buried villages.
This is all what is left of the village San Juan.
And influenced culture.
This is the plant that's being used to produce tequila.
Where we get a bird's eye view at danger.
I don't know if I want it to erupt right now or not.
And witness the raw power of Volcano de Colima at night.
It looked like a fire fountain, probably 500 meters high.
The Earth's continents are moving. Between North and South America, Mexico is being torn apart, bent, and thrust upwards on a slow-motion tectonic roller coaster. One of the byproducts of this movement is volcanism. And Mexico has two of North America's most active and dangerous volcanoes. Millions of people live in their shadows. They largely rely on faith and Mexico's civil protection to keep them safe from the dangers posed by these volatile giants. This is Puebla, Mexico's fourth largest city. 1.4 million people live beside the country's biggest, Popocatépetl, which translates into Smoky Mountain. It's an active volcano with an extremely violent past. Volcanoes like Popo are of major interest to volcanologists like Dr. Tom Pfeiffer.
Popocatépetl is a massive stratovolcano. In fact, it is not only one of the largest and most active volcanoes in volume and by activity, but it also is the second highest active volcano in the whole of North America.
Popocatépetl is a highly explosive volcano. It has had 15 major eruptions since the arrival of the Spanish in the 16th century, and 5 cataclysmic eruptions in the last 10,000 years. Eruptions so massive that the volcano blew itself apart. For 60 years, Popocatépetl remained relatively quiet, but reawoke violently in December of 1994.
The first eruptions were quite powerful and sent bombs to 3-4 kilometers distance. We just saw one of these explosions that occur maybe on average 10 times a day at the moment. We see an ash plume that has risen to approximately, I'd guess, 1 kilometer above the crater. So nothing really that small. If you could be very close, it would be quite impressive.
Since 2013, it has been erupting consistently, and lately, activity has been on the rise, raising new fears that a major eruption might be on the horizon.
This volcano has clearly the potential to threaten the area where we are, but also beyond. Parts of Mexico City are built on deposits from Popocatépetl, showing that in the past, eruptions have been able to affect that area. So it is a volcano that is on the top priority list of potential natural disasters to monitor.
Puebla was founded nearly 500 years ago by Spanish colonialists. They had no way of knowing the extreme danger the volcano posed. That buried beneath their feet lay the remnants of the ancient center of Cholula, an historic city that was wiped out by an eruption of Popocatépetl. The event was rated as a Plinian eruption, similar to the colossal event that buried Pompeii. Plinian eruptions generate massive ash clouds and pyroclastic flows. Hot avalanches of debris and ash that destroy everything in their path. When the Spanish colonials started to build the Our Lady of the Virgin Sanctuary, they did not realize that the hill they chose to build on was the ruins of Mexico's largest pre-Hispanic pyramid buried beneath ash and debris.
I think here is a very interesting spot because we see the actual deposit of the ash flow that invaded the city. As you see, it's full of pottery fragments and debris from building material. So this came racing down and destroyed anything that was rising higher than a certain level.
Because of the significance of the 16th century church, only part of the pyramid has been excavated. To access the structure, archaeologists cut tunnels into the volcanic debris. This archaeological site is one of several around Popo that were buried in this eruption. In places, the debris is 2 stories deep.
Get this claustrophobic feeling with little alleys going here and there, and so I think I have the sense of orientation came from there. So we get back onto the main tunnel over there. Yeah, an interesting, eerie feeling.
Most of the tunnels are bricked up for support. What Tom is looking for is evidence that the pyramid was buried by ashfall or a pyroclastic flow.
Yeah, look, this is part of the old structure. It's clearly built, and this is the loose deposit, the ignimbrite.
Ignimbrite is formed from compacted hot ash and material that has flowed off the volcano during an eruption.
You can see the marks. The deposit was removed.
The remnants of these ancient cities are a potent reminder of what could be if Popo erupts again. The worst-case scenario would be the collapse of the cone during a major eruption. But this is not the only hazard they pose. A volcano's hydrothermal system effect runs deep underground and often extends beyond the volcano's structure. Popo's underground system is so massive that parts of Mexico City have been built on it. This means that there can be far-reaching effects beyond the normal eruption behavior. Buried within the crowded city, a geological feature said to be a volcano has fascinated people for 1,000 years.
If it was a volcano, you would expect lava, but this is definitely not lava. So if you look at this dented surface, that's almost exactly what you would find in limestone areas where karstic processes chemically erode the limestone. Basically, it's the same stuff you find in the tubes of your washing machine when you have hard mineral-rich water. It's deposits from water.
The cone does have a crater on the top that descends below ground level. It may not be from a volcano, but it is likely the byproduct of one. As magma rises, it comes into contact with the area's hydrological system. Underground water is converted to steam, and it can erupt as a geyser.
It's said that it appeared in 1063 AD during an eruption of Popocatépetl. So from far, maybe you would see steam, hot steam coming out from there, and people would associate it with volcanic activity. Here you see it very nicely how this cone is built up by individual layers, some very thin like here, and you see those typical sinter structures. Deposits left from water that was rich in mainly carbonates. So since its formation, the hydrothermal system that once fed it has apparently changed again. So remember, it's 1,000 years ago. So it's rare you can go inside.
The probability of a geyser or a volcano opening in downtown Cholula or Mexico City is not very high, but it is possible. It happened 8 hours away in Michoacan State. In 1943, a fissure opened up in a Mexican cornfield near the town of San Juan.
A farmer was there ploughing his field, and he witnessed the moment the volcano was born. Fissures opened, lava came out, and he probably witnessed rocks being blown out and eventually saw fire. And that must have been an amazing event.
The volcano is called Paricutin, and it erupted for 9 years before it went extinct. The event was a field day for scientists. It was the first time that a volcano had been witnessed from its birth to its death. CNN listed it as one of the 7 natural wonders of the world. Paricutin's lava flow was slow enough that most of the people in the area were able to move away before the lava and ash destroyed their homes. With the exception of the stone church, Paricutin completely destroyed the town of San Juan. Today marks the 72nd anniversary of the start of the eruption. As they do every year, the locals mark that day with celebrations. And the ruins of San Juan's church play a major part in that. To get to the church, you can either walk for 2 hours or go by horseback.
Wait, for me it's an adventure. I'm not very familiar with horses. Are you gonna be okay? You're not going to throw me to the lava? Go, 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 yes. This is all what is left of the village in San Juan. Frontal part of the main church with one tower is still standing. Locally, this is regarded as a miracle that the lava flows consumed everything but spared at least part of the church.
Divine intervention might have played a part in it, but it's likely that the church's survival had a lot to do with its solid construction. The 4 spires were built from heavily reinforced concrete. It appears that was solid enough to provide enough resistance to divert the lava flow. Although the spires were able to channel the lava around much of the church, lateral pressure became too great, causing the building to collapse. It was later covered in a second flow.
I'm standing at just above the height of the ceiling of the main ship on the first floor. So I can't actually see the ground, but it's almost there. It must be 7-8 meters. So this gives you an idea of the thickness of the flow.
The original church altar is still intact. People from all over the region come here to thank God for sparing the people of San Juan. When you look at the way the altar resisted the lava flows and destroyed much of the church and surrounding city, it is understandable why people consider this to be a miracle.
El primer pueblo donde entró la lava, Paricutin. Cuando entró la lava, Paricutin.
The eruption of Paricutin was so recent that there are still people in the area that remember the event.
Y estaba acá este pueblo que está acá arriba, Angawan.
Agawan.
Sí.
See,
Pero primero,
at the time of the eruption, he was 13 years old, lived in a village up there. People were quite afraid at that time. But they had sufficient time to evacuate their belongings, their goods. Nobody was killed. He said it was constantly raining ash on the villages in the area, and many houses collapsed because of the weight of the ash on the roofs.
Patakutin is what's known as a monogenetic volcano, or a cinder cone, that only erupts once in its life and then dies.
But if you look at the landscape here, it is actually the typical kind of activity in this part of the Trans-Mexican volcanic zone. Each cone we see here is basically the result of a similar eruption than the one that occurred 72 years ago.
When activity returns, it chooses a new conduit to erupt from, creating a new cinder cone, and that can be anywhere within the vast area known as a volcanic field. Usually, a monogenetic field has between 10 and 100 volcanoes. But here in Mexico, it's unusually large. There are more than 1,000 small cinder cones within the field. Science still doesn't know why magma erupts like this. The working theory is that the ground is soft and there is an unusually high number of underground faults or fractures, so that the magma has easy routes to the surface.
Patakutin over 9 years erupted an estimated total of 1.5 cubic kilometers, which is quite a sizable eruption actually.
After spending time looking at the way lava flows reformed the area, Tom continues on to explore Patakutin's crater. It's a short trip, just about half an hour, but it's a steep and arduous climb.
So this is it, where during 9 years all this ash that we see covering the slopes, the entire landscape around the lava field essentially.
By the end of the first day, the cone was already 5 stories high. The eruption intensified as time went on.
There's still a lot of heat stored, of course, in the lower layers. When rainwater gets into contact with the still hot rocks, it is transformed into steam and comes out here along small fissures. In terms of the lifespan of a volcano, this one had a very short one. Typically, volcanoes live for hundreds of thousands of years, and this one just 9 years.
If this volcanic field ever comes active again, it is likely that scientists will know ahead of time. As magma rises from deep within the Earth, it will generate earthquakes as it fractures rock on its way to the surface.
And modern seismic networks should be able to locate progressively shallower earthquakes, which is the clear signature of magma intruding from depth, rising towards the surface.
By tracking the depth as it progresses upwards, scientists will not only get an indication of when an eruption will occur, but also where.
The least thing you want is a cone like this forming under a village and be not prepared.
When people hear about volcanoes erupting, the general image is of lava flows rushing towards a city or being buried by pyroclastic flows. But most of the time, the real damage from volcanic eruptions is from the ash. Ash from nearby volcanoes can collapse roofs or even bury towns. But over time, that ash becomes a benefit. Rising out of the Tequila Valley is the volcano that bears its name. Volcanic ash is nutrient-rich, which makes it ideal for agriculture. Around the world, volcanic ash is prized for the flavor it gives to its crops. Tom heads to central Mexico, where an extinct volcano is at the heart of one of Mexico's most iconic products, tequila. rising over the valley is the Tequila volcano. Ash from an eruption 200,000 years ago created the fertile valley, which today is lined with rows of a native spiky plant.
This is the plant that's being used to produce tequila. It's a special variety of the agave family, the so-called blue agave, because of its color. You have to be really careful with these extremely sharp points of the leaves. So you can easily, they will just punch through your skin. I have a little cut here.
Tom is at the tequila producers of Tres Toños, or the Three Tonys, a medium-sized producer in the tequila region. These plants are blue agave and are a succulent, not a cactus. The difference is that the moisture is stored in the leaves and not in the stems or trunks. The blue agave plant prefers the high altitudes found in this region of Mexico. They can grow to the height and equal the weight of an adult human. The method of growing and harvesting has remained unchanged for centuries. The plants are cared for and harvested by humidors. These men have passed down their knowledge about the blue agave from father to son for generations.
What we are looking at is actually a tradition that has been around for almost 500 years. Since 1542 is the first recorded production of tequila. And since tequila has become so famous, it has also become a symbol of Mexico. It requires a lot of skill and strength, and it's usually taught from father to son.
The agave takes between 7 and 9 years to mature before they are harvested.
The position is important.
No. Oh, this is very strong. So if they can do 300 a day, I probably can do 5 at this speed. I thought I was getting close, but actually this seems to be the toughest part. No, this is not for me. Por favor. It looks effortless almost, as he does it. Yeah, he just flips it over.
The agave hearts are taken to the plant where they are cooked in autoclaves and then crushed to extract the juices. The juice is then fermented.
Inside here is the juice, and it's fermenting, and it's so powerful to see. It reminds of a hot spring at a volcano, actually.
After the fermenting stage, the liquid is tested for its alcohol content. This process takes 72 hours.
He's measuring the density of the liquid, which is directly proportional to the content of alcohol, because alcohol is light. As fermentation goes on, more alcohol is being produced and the liquid becomes lighter. So during the 72 hours, this floating meter will slowly sink as the density of the liquid in which it is goes down. So at the time it will be here. That means he knows that it contains 55% alcohol and is ready to be distilled.
Mexico has the origin of denomination for tequila, which means to be classified as authentic, it must be produced in one of the certified growing locations and must meet a certain standard of quality.
So, of course, the very final step is actually to drink it.
Salud. Salud.
Yeah. I like that one. It has this, it's a bit smoother. It has a slight woody taste. We are at the foot of Tequila volcano, an extinct old stratovolcano, which has fertilized with its lava flows and ash deposits this valley, making a perfect ground for the production of tequila. And now we're here and enjoying one of these bottles. Well, part of it. Salud. That's very smooth, this one.
While the Tequila region remains quiet, Mexico's other active volcano is anything but. Volcano de Colima, or the Colima volcano, has been increasing in activity. In the 3 weeks before Tom's arrival, Colima has had some powerful eruptions, raising serious concerns. Like Popocatépetl, it too has a large population around its base. Nearly 500,000 people live within its danger zone. Given its eruptive history, there is some belief that the volcano is on a 100-year cycle that will culminate in a colossal eruption. The last colossal eruption was 1913. It destroyed most of the volcano and caused widespread damage in the city of Colima, killing 8 people. Today, the area is vastly more populated, making the threat greater.
Buenas tardes.
Hola, ¿cómo estás?
Bien, bien. Ulises.
Yo soy Tom.
2 people that live with that danger are photographer Hernando Rivera and Ulysses Chavez, the owner of the cabin.
Es perfecto. La vista está muy bonita.
Mi amigo, él es fotógrafo.
Hernando, sí,
Genial,
finalmente.
sus fotos son estupendas.
How's the volcano been in the past days?
Active is good for Tom. He's here to photograph Colima for a book he is putting together on active volcanoes.
We are maybe, I looked on the map, should be 6-7 kilometers from the distance straight line to the summit. So in case of a major explosion like last time in 1913, we would not be safe here. This area was hit by pyroclastic flows.
A large eruption in the next 5 days is unlikely. Although the volcano is going through a phase of high activity, the frequent eruptions indicate to Tom that pressure is not able to build up inside the volcano. And he is well outside the exclusion zone imposed by civil protection. If the intensity increases, or if abnormal activity is detected, Colima's civil protection will increase that zone for everyone's safety.
Have you been here before to see the eruptions?
Yeah, almost on weekends. I came here and just enjoy the show.
It doesn't get more comfortable.
Tom spends a lot of time visiting and photographing active volcanoes. He finds Colima irresistible. The volcano undergoes frequent moderate eruptions. Colima is a stratovolcano, a type of volcano that is made up from layers of ejected material. With each lava flow and ash eruption, the cone gets bigger. This type of volcano is prone to collapse either during an eruption or from erosion. To make matters worse, Colima produces a sticky type of lava that collects at the summit, growing the volcano faster. The result is a much steeper volcano that adds to the likelihood of collapse. Very active volcanoes like Colima often go through periods of destruction followed by rebuilding.
In the past, tens of thousands of years ago, a much bigger volcano was in its place, and that volcano collapsed and generated a giant avalanche that traveled that way, leaving a depression. And this one is in the stage of rebuilding its cone. That's why it's so beautiful. It's the last light of the day. Only the upper part of the mountain has still sunlight, and it's glowing red, and we had just a beautiful ash eruption. It looked incredibly nice with the blue background of the clear sky and the red ash. A perfect evening.
The explosions are impressive by day, but they are spectacular by night.
Wow, this was by far the most spectacular eruption so far. After a relatively small one that followed 6 hours of nothing, big one started that lasted several minutes with a continuous jet of incandescent ash, lots of bombs. The whole upper half of the cone was bombarded, and it was fantastic to see. It was constantly pumping up, and you could hear the roaring of the explosion and the tumbling sound of rocks falling down. Yeah, I'm happy to have it on picture.
The upper part of the volcano is covered with incandescent material. What looks like small exhalations by day take on a different look entirely at night, where you can see the glow of molten lava. Each day at a volcano is different, as it runs through short-term cycles. It all depends on the rate that magma is flowing into the chamber below the crater. Those volcanic bombs, or giant rocks, are thrown out of the volcano and roll downhill. The activity is building the volcano. Over the period of a century, a volcano like Kolyma can add a third or more to its size.
It seems the volcano has picked up since last night. This morning we already had two quite sizable eruptions. The upper flanks are full of dust, which comes from rockfalls, and actually now there is a rockfall going on. To me it seems it's picking up, both as especially the size of the average explosion. It might be that the eruptions are less frequent, but the intervals between them are, so the intervals are longer, but that seems also to result in bigger explosions. As more magma accumulates, that is ejected during the subsequent explosion.
What's occurring inside the crater is not visible. From the ground, it's impossible to see how many vents are causing the eruptions. Often, a volcano will have more than one eruptive vent, and each will have a different characteristic. Some vents produce smaller, less explosive eruptions. At times, all the vents within the crater erupt together, producing a larger than average eruption. The best way to see what's happening is from above.
Yes, we have been so lucky that the volcano started to erupt while we were approaching it. A jet of ash is rising from the central crater, and it's still going on after 3-4 minutes, I think.
Pilots play an important role in the global reporting of volcanic eruptions. Here, the pilot is requested by the control tower to relay information on the eruption column's height and drift.
The height of Esplum's, the pilot with his experience told them it's about 2 kilometers tall, 2 kilometers above the summit, so it means, which is a moderately large eruption actually.
This information will be relayed by local air traffic controllers to any passenger planes using this busy corridor. Volcanic ash is incredibly abrasive. If it were to be sucked in by the plane, it can cause the engines to stall. A small turboplane, like the one that Tom is in, is not in danger. The pilot's observation of the summit crater will also get relayed onto the Civil Protection Agency. Tom will post his observations to his volcano discovery website. Those are widely used by the Smithsonian Institution's Global Volcano Activity Report that is sent out weekly. From this vantage point, Tom can see just how steep the volcano is. As they draw level with the crater, they can look right inside. It looks like a large ash pit where material has fallen back in from previous eruptions.
And in fact, I'm not sure if I would like to have an explosion right now. We are so close.
In spite of Tom's wishes, the volcano erupts. Fortunately, it's not a sudden, big explosion, but something much smaller. A number of ash jets shoot up from multiple vents. The initial burst clears the conduit, so the eruption is sustained for a few minutes. The eruption releases pressure inside the volcano. As ash falls back down, it blocks the conduit and the process of repressurization begins again. The flight gave Tom a great view of the crater. Now he and Hernando Rivera are going to see Colima from another angle. They're heading to the volcano observation post on top of Nevado de Colima, an old extinct part of the complex next to the active cone, which is known by its full name, Fuego de Colima. The area is off limits to the general public, but Tom and Hernando get special permission. Security is tight, and the area is patrolled to keep unauthorized thrill seekers away. They are greeted by members of the Jalisco Civil Protection, who will guide them the rest of the way up the steep roads.
The guy is worried if this band makes it, actually. We convinced him to at least try it. We'll see. Well, it's typical for if you try to access an active volcano, that you have obstacles that are not necessarily in the nature of the volcano, but sometimes, or very often actually, it's the authorities. So apparently the way is very bad and dangerous.
Yes.
I'm not very afraid of the volcano having an exceptional explosion and affecting us at 5 kilometers distance. I'm actually more worried of a narrow road and this car flipping over and we're landing down there in some gully.
Access to active volcanoes varies throughout the world. In Hawaii, you can drive up to Kilauea's active crater, and at Italy's Mount Etna, you can ski the active area. However, once an eruption starts, the skiing is shut down until the eruption stops.
I think we're just a little bit higher than the summit of Fuego.
Tom is heading to the Jalisco Civil Protection Agency's volcanic observation post on Colima's neighbor. It's an older, extinct volcano that is part of the same complex as Colima. It's an excellent and safe vantage point to monitor the changes at the summit of the active volcano. The structure is built with reinforced concrete that can withstand a large eruption. The volcano is still very active.
We're just having an eruption. It's a small one, but This is so beautiful because we are so much closer than from our cabin down there, which is also a great view from the west. And it's incredible. You have the feeling you see each detail on the crater rim. We're probably going to have bigger ones, and already it's very beautiful. We're just a little bit higher, I would say, than the top of the crater of Colima, Fuego de Colima. The view is just amazing. To the west, see the chain of mountains all the way to the Pacific coast. In the far distance there, we have almost 4,000 meters above sea level here.
As the sun goes down, Tom gets ready for Mother Nature's greatest show. Today, the eruptions have been between 2 and 6 hours apart, so there's nothing to do but be patient and wait.
We are here on just facing Fuego volcano, maybe 4 kilometers away. It's 11 or something. Beautiful moonlight, almost no wind. We're at 4,000 meters altitude, and although it's freezing, it's quite bearable because there's no wind, and we have the feeling it might erupt soon again. There's a little incandescent spot. I guess it's what is left of the most recent lava dome. This glow sometimes increases, but it looks as if it has been quiet for a while, so I have this feeling it might erupt very soon again. Anyway, we are ready here.
As the pressure increases, small vents open up, shooting out burning gas. Inside the crater, the conduit is plugged. It will need to build up enough pressure before it can blow the plug. This builds to the point it can sustain itself, and an eruption happens. This is a full eruption, and it's a good one. These eruptions can continue for as long as there's pressure in the conduit.
Now, I think this was probably the biggest one we've had in 5 days. We've been observing Colima. It looked like a fire fountain, probably 500 meters high. It's not a lava fountain, but it looked as if all this incandescent ash blocks being ejected and then falling back onto the flank and tumbling down until the whole flank here was glowing red. It was an amazing show. I'm glad we insisted coming here and waiting out in the cold and at night. It was really worth it.
The following morning, the volcano is once again very active. If the idea of getting this close to an active volcano seems reckless or foolhardy, then consider Tom's view. experienced volcanologists don't take risks. They carefully watch the cycles and know when the climb would be too dangerous. They adhere to the rules put in place by the local authorities. Tom believes it's safer than driving on motorways. But what makes it most worthwhile for Tom is that he gets a front row seat to see the elemental forces that shape our Earth.
There's this incredibly beauty of this mountain, which every now and then spits out fire. It's this sense of something much bigger than humans. There is this aspect of mystery of nature, something much bigger than us, are very prone to give us this sensation of being close to the elements. Something that reminds you of the creation of the Earth. And that's what's most fascinating to me. Combined with the sheer beauty of something symmetric, where there is a crater and all of a sudden you see fire coming out from there.
For now, Kolyma continues to erupt moderately and safely. It is likely that before any major eruption, the volcano's activity will pick up and will demonstrate signs that will give scientists enough warning to safely evacuate the people surrounding the volcano. Time will tell. The history of humanity has always been affected and rerouted by natural disasters. We know that certain kinds of volcanic eruptions have the power to bring incredible destruction in moments. But now, we have sophisticated technology and a better understanding of the mechanisms at work inside a volcano to monitor them. In Mexico, millions of people live in the shadows of active volcanoes. They will erupt again. The unanswered question is when. But for now, we observe and wait and marvel at their power and beauty.